All right, so today we're going to dive into some Buddhist philosophy.
Okay.
We're tackling this fascinating idea of becoming. And no, it's not like, morphing into some mystical creature or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more about like understanding the different ways we experience existence.
I see.
Kind of like exploring all the various flavors of reality, if you will.
That's a great way to put it. It's really about the forces, both internal and external,
Right,
that shape our reality. And not just in like this life, but, potentially beyond as well.
So our source material lays out 3 levels of becoming: sensuality, form, and formlessness.
Okay.
And what I think is intriguing is the idea that we get a taste of all 3 levels in our everyday lives.
And it's those levels that are really interesting because they're not static.
Right.
They're fluid.
Yeah.
And they're influenced by our actions, which is where the concept of karma comes in.
I love how the source material uses this analogy. Karma is like a field. Consciousness is like a seed planted in that field. And then craving is the moisture that makes it sprout.
Yeah.
It really paints a picture of how our actions and desires kind of shape our experiences, right?
It really highlights that dynamic relationship between our intentions, actions, and then the results we experience.
So let's start with, I think, what's probably the most relatable level. Sensuality.
Okay.
It's all about our relationship with sensual pleasures,
Right.
but it also includes sensual pain. It's not just about the experiences themselves, but like our attachment to those.
Right.
So does that mean it's more about the wanting than the having?
You've hit the nail on the head. Imagine someone who's always chasing the newest gadget. They're more focused on that feeling of wanting,
Yeah.
of acquiring, more than the actual enjoyment of using the gadget.
So it's like they're stuck on that hedonic treadmill,
Exactly.
always seeking that next hit of pleasure, never quite satisfied.
Precisely. And that's where the 2 types of karma come in: skillful and unskillful.
So the source material explains that skillful karma comes from generosity and virtue,
Yes.
and unskillful karma is driven by greed, aversion, and delusion.
Right.
Do those actions only affect some like future life, or do they also have an impact on our present experience?
They absolutely impact our present lives. If you think about, if you cultivate generosity and virtue,
Yeah.
people are more likely to trust and respect you. And, you're contributing to a more harmonious environment. And that naturally leads to a sense of well-being and connection.
So it's not just about like being a good person for some karmic reward later.
Right.
It's about creating like a more positive and fulfilling life right now.
Exactly. Skillful actions have this ripple effect.
That's
They
it.
influence not only our internal state, but also the way we interact with the world and how the world interacts with us.
But then there's the unskillful karma.
Yes.
And the source material doesn't shy away from like the potential consequences of that.
Right.
It talks about how greed, aversion, and delusion can really create suffering, both internally and externally.
Yes, and it emphasizes how those unskillful actions can lead to a sense of being threatened, agitated, and almost feverish in the mind. It's like a constant unease and dissatisfaction.
So if I'm understanding this right, our actions on the sensual level,
Yes.
they can shape not just like our current experience, but also future rebirths in different realms of existence.
Absolutely. The source material goes into detail describing these realms, everything from the hell realms with their intense suffering to the Devo worlds
Whoa.
where there's exquisite pleasures.
I mean, the story about Nanda and the 500 dove-footed nymphs really paints a picture
Oh, yeah,
of how alluring those higher realms can be.
for sure.
So it makes sense why we might get caught up in chasing those kinds of experiences.
Oh, absolutely. But you have to remember that even these higher realms are impermanent.
Yeah.
They're not an escape from the cycle of becoming. Eventually, the karma that propelled us there will kind of run out,
Okay.
and the cycle will continue.
So even like a heavenly realm is just a temporary stop on a much longer journey.
That's a great way to put it. It highlights how the true goal should be to try to understand this whole process of becoming,
Yeah.
rather than getting attached to any particular state or realm.
Okay, so this is where I kind of get tripped up. The source material mentions that sometimes it seems like good actions lead to bad results.
Right.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
So does that mean that the whole karma thing is flawed?
No, not at all. It's just that the effects of our actions can take a long time to unfold. You might not see the results immediately, and some actions might even seem to contradict the principle of karma at first glance.
So it's like planting a seed.
Yes,
It takes time to grow, and you don't always know what the fruit's going to be.
exactly. And the source uses a really good example of a king rewarding a man for killing his enemy.
Okay.
You know, on the surface, it seems like a good deed is being rewarded. But that karmic consequence of taking a life, well, that's going to come into play eventually.
So the king is setting up both himself and the man for future suffering.
Exactly. It really shows how important it is to consider the long-term consequences
Right.
of our actions and not just focusing on the immediate outcomes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like it reminds you to consider the bigger picture, you know, how everything's interconnected.
Right.
Our actions have a ripple effect in our own lives and in the lives of others.
And it's that ripple effect that's so crucial for navigating the next level of becoming form.
Okay.
This is where we're going to delve into meditative states and the cultivation of inner peace.
Intriguing. Sounds like we're about to level up in our exploration of becoming.
We are.
I'm ready to dive in.
Let's go.
Okay, so we've explored that sensuality level, you know,
Right.
where it's all about like our relationship with sensory experiences.
Yeah.
But now we're moving on to the form level. So what makes this level different?
Well, the source material connects the form level to meditative states,
Good.
specifically something called jhana.
Yeah.
And it's really focused on cultivating inner peace and stability. And involves withdrawing from the distractions of the senses
Okay.
and turning your attention inward.
So instead of being caught up in, you know, the external world,
Right?
all those sights and sounds and sensations,
Yeah.
you're shifting your focus to like the
Exactly.
internal landscape of the mind.
Precisely. It's about cultivating a different kind of experience,
Okay.
one that's more refined and subtle
Okay.
than the pleasures we encounter on that sensual level.
But hold on. Earlier we were talking about how even the higher sensual realms are impermanent.
Right.
So is the form level any different?
That's a great question.
Is it just another temporary state?
It is a great question, and it really gets to the heart of what makes the form level so intriguing. While it's true that the form level is still part of the cycle of becoming, it offers like a glimpse into a different way of experiencing reality.
Okay, so how would you describe that different way of experiencing reality?
The source material describes jhana as like a profound stillness and concentration,
Okay.
where you can really experience a level of peace and clarity
Right.
that surpasses anything you might find in like the sensory world.
So it's not about escaping reality.
Right.
But like
It's about experience.
experiencing a deeper, more refined dimension of it.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that the deeper you go into jhana,
Yeah.
the more refined those experiences become. It's like a journey of deepening inner peace and understanding.
You know, that makes me think of how mindfulness is often described as a practice of present moment awareness.
Right.
Is there any connection between jhana and these like modern mindfulness practices?
There are definitely parallels.
Okay.
Both jhana and mindfulness involve cultivating a focused and non-reactive awareness.
Okay.
Now, while jhana is a much more concentrated form of meditation,
Right.
the principles of attention and equanimity that
Yeah.
you develop in mindfulness practice
Yeah.
can really be a foundation for exploring those deeper meditative states.
So you're saying that even if someone isn't like aiming for these profound jhana states,
Right.
that just cultivating mindfulness in their daily life can still offer like a taste
Exactly.
of that peace and clarity that's associated with the form level.
Absolutely. Mindfulness can really help us become aware of those habitual patterns, of
Yeah.
reacting to those sensory experiences, which can then create space for greater peace and stability in our lives.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, the idea of these jhana states,
Yeah.
with their refined pleasures and deep concentration, it does sound pretty appealing.
Right.
I mean, the source material even mentions that mastering these states can lead to rebirth in the Brahma worlds,
Yeah.
where lifespans are measured in eons.
It's easy to get drawn to that idea of bliss and longevity.
Yep.
But remember, even those Brahma worlds are subject to impermanence.
Okay.
Eventually, that really long lifespan will come to an end.
Right.
And the cycle of becoming will continue.
So just like the higher sensual realms,
Yes.
it's not like a final destination,
No.
but another stop on the journey.
Precisely. And what I find so fascinating is that the source material
Yeah.
highlights a parallel path to those Brahma worlds
Really?
that doesn't even involve jhana.
So there's an alternate route.
There is.
What does that involve?
It involves cultivating the 4 Brahma viharas, goodwill, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity.
Those qualities sound kind of familiar.
Right.
They're often discussed in like Buddhist teachings on loving kindness and compassion, right?
You're exactly right. The Brahma Viharas are qualities that we can cultivate in formal meditation practice, but also in our daily interactions.
Cool.
They're really about opening our hearts and extending that sense of loving kindness and compassion to ourselves and all beings.
So cultivating these qualities can actually lead to rebirth in the Brahma worlds.
That's what the source material suggests.
Even without mastering those deep jhana states.
Yes. And I think it points to this really fascinating connection between our internal state of mind and our external reality. It's not just about like withdrawing from the world and seeking isolated bliss, but it's about transforming ourselves in a way that benefits, you know, both ourselves and others.
So earlier we talked about how skillful karma, driven by generosity and virtue, can create a more positive, fulfilling life right now.
Yes.
Do the Brahma Viharas kind of work in a similar way?
Absolutely. Cultivating these qualities has a huge impact on our present moment experience.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. When you're filled with goodwill and compassion, you know, your interactions with others become much more harmonious and kind. You naturally create a more positive and supportive environment around you.
So it's like, in a way, cultivating the Brahma Vihara is kind of like planting these seeds of kindness and compassion that blossoms not only in our own hearts, but also in the world around us.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It highlights how interconnected we all are and how our internal state ripples outward and really influences that collective experience.
It's like we're weaving this tapestry of positive energy, you know, thread by thread.
Yeah, with each act of kindness and compassion.
And that tapestry becomes the very foundation for that next level of becoming formlessness, which is probably the most challenging and abstract of the three.
Okay, so I have to admit, formlessness, it's a bit mind-boggling.
It is.
It sounds like we're about to enter a whole new dimension of reality.
We are.
Okay, so we've made, you know, we journeyed through the sensuality level, you know, grounded in our senses, and then the form level, where we cultivate that inner peace and stability. But now we're stepping into this realm of formlessness.
And this is where things get really abstract.
It's true. Formlessness represents that, like, pinnacle of refinement, you know, in the Buddhist framework of becoming. Here we're transcending even the most subtle forms, including like our physical bodies and even mental images.
So are we talking about a state of like pure consciousness then? You know, beyond any tangible form or concept?
Yes.
Honestly, it's kind of hard to even wrap my head around that.
It is a challenging concept, you know, to grasp, even for those who are well versed in Buddhist philosophy. But what the source material emphasizes is that formlessness isn't about annihilation or nothingness. It's about experiencing a dimension of reality that is beyond those limitations of form and perception.
So earlier we were discussing how even the higher realms, like the Brahma worlds, are ultimately impermanent. Does that concept of impermanence apply to the formless level as well?
That's a really crucial insight. Because even though the formless realms are considered like the most refined and subtle states of existence, that principle of impermanence, it still holds true. Nothing in the realm of conditioned existence is permanent or unchanging.
So even if we were to reach those formless states, it wouldn't be a final escape from this cycle of becoming.
Exactly. And the source material even suggests that, you know, in the formless realms, there's still like a subtle clinging to existence, a subtle sense of I am that prevents true liberation.
So if even formlessness is impermanent, it really underscores that idea that, you know, the true goal isn't about reaching a specific state or realm.
Exactly.
It's about understanding the nature of becoming itself.
You got it. And that understanding is what can pave the way for liberation, for that complete cessation of suffering.
Okay, but how do we move from like intellectual understanding to actual liberation? The source describes these 4 formless jhanas, each one like progressively more subtle. Are those states the key to breaking free from the cycle?
The formless jhanas can be really powerful tools for exploring that nature of consciousness and weakening our attachment to form. However, the source material cautions against clinging even to these really refined states. True liberation comes not from attaining any specific state, but from uprooting those underlying causes of suffering.
So I'm starting to see like the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
It's not about reaching like a specific destination,
right,
but transforming our relationship with like this whole journey of becoming.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that suffering arises from our attachment to impermanent things, whether it's sensual pleasure, a physical form, or even like a refined state of consciousness.
So it's about letting go of that clinging.
Yes.
That grasping that keeps us bound to that cycle.
That's the heart of it. And that path to letting go is paved with those qualities we've been discussing.
Right.
Generosity, virtue, mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion.
It strikes me that those qualities aren't just about personal liberation. They also have a big impact on how we interact with the world around us.
Absolutely. When we cultivate these qualities, we're not just benefiting ourselves.
Right.
We're contributing to a more harmonious and compassionate world for everyone.
So in a way, that journey of becoming, it's not just about individual transformation, but like a collective evolution.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It highlights that interconnectedness, you know, of all things, and that ripple effect of our actions.
Yeah.
Every act of kindness, every moment of mindfulness, every insightful realization, it contributes to a shift in the collective consciousness.
Wow, this whole conversation has really shifted my perspective.
I'm glad.
It's not just about escaping to some blissful realm, but it's about waking up to that reality of impermanence.
Yes.
And recognizing that power we have to create, a more positive and compassionate world.
Right.
For ourselves and for others.
And that is, that truly empowering message at the heart of Buddhist philosophy. Liberation is not some distant goal reserved for a select few.
Right.
It's a potential within each of us, waiting to be cultivated and expressed.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We explored those 3 levels of becoming.
We did.
Uncovered those workings of karma, and glimpsed that path to liberation.
Yes.
Sort of journey.
It really has been a fascinating exploration. And remember, the journey doesn't end here.
Right.
Keep exploring these concepts, contemplate their meaning, and most importantly, put them into practice in your daily life.
That's great advice. And all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Buddhist philosophy.
Yes, thank you.
We hope this episode has sparked your curiosity.
I hope so.
And inspired you to continue exploring, the depths of your own being.
Yeah.
Until next time. All right, so today we're going to dive into